Good morning, and welcome to another edition of American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea. It is a reckless Friday. It's only half as reckless as usual, as you can see. Maybe it's double reckless if the idea was to allow Gally to be by himself. But I'm going to run a solo show tonight unless we get any surprise visitors that see I'm alone and think they want to come hang out. It was a big day. There's a lot of news out there, some chatter, big stories. Obviously, we played earlier in the week. Before we get rolling here, I do want to ask all of you, the listeners, if you were on Monday night, we ran a little bit of a different format. We had lots of comments come through. We tried to address each comment. So I'm going to ask for your help here. Help me get through however long we are together for this program today. And that way we can start the conversation, talk about the big news. We'll talk about some transfers. We'll also recap a little bit of the Marseille match. But before we did that, I did want to take a moment. I know the guys mentioned it last night on the Thursday night show as well, but we just want to put our thoughts and sympathies out to Ibrahim Kanate, his family. The announcement has been made. The family matter that took him away from the team was the passing of his father. There's mixed reports on whether or not he had been sick. Some are speculating that it has been a long-term illness that may have played into some of the indecision and some of the items we saw earlier in the season, and more importantly, also really where Kanate's head might be when it comes to re-signing his contract, upping a deal. Big decisions like that often take your family, and if you're going through a family trouble, that can always impact that. So I just wanted to take a moment, recognize that, and talk a little bit about the Marseille match. We are going to get into the breaking news this morning regarding the transfer speculations. The big news coming out today is about Andy Robertson. We will get to that, I promise. Good morning, Scotty. Hello from Monmouth country. I hear you're also from Jersey. I'm not from Jersey, but I am from the Northeast. And I get up in those areas pretty often. So I've been in New York City a few times for the pods. I've visited some folks down there. I travel quite a bit for work. I'm not from Jersey. You might be getting that mistaken for the fact that I was born, unfortunately, a New York Giants fan. So therefore, I get associated with New Jersey often because, like most things from Jersey, they're just trying to steal parts of New York. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I'm a kid from Massachusetts. Grew up outside of Springfield, Massachusetts. But I, unfortunately, as I said, I wasn't blessed or smart enough to become a Patriots fan as a child. So I lost those 20 years of fun. But then again, when your team beats them in Super Bowls, it's also kind of fun living in their area. But let's get back to the topic on hand. Let's talk about Wednesday, the Marseille match. Lineup came out. No real surprises. I think Gomez inclusion was something that fans were excited and nervous for all at once. It's like sitting behind the couch with your hands over your eyes because the play can be outstanding. The player makes other players around him assured. You could see that with Van Dijk. I don't know that they spoke all match long, and it looked like they were communicating beautifully. They kind of understand where the other will go. It's huge in a center back partnership, and it's probably something that's been underreported and underappreciated over his time at Liverpool is how consistent of a partner to Van Dijk Gomez has been. Top level Gomez, in my opinion, is the best partnership with Van Dijk in the entire time that he's been at the club. I'd argue that him and Matip probably had the longest run of consistency purely because, and it's crazy to say this, Matip was more available and fit than Gomez, and Gomez has struggled with just the constant injuries, and they've been long-term injuries. So really happy for the player, nervous for how long it could take Kanate to be out. But of course, as we mentioned earlier, with the news going on of what is happening with Kanate right now, obviously he needs to take as much time with himself and his family to get things back in order. I was pleasantly surprised with the way in which we went about the match. I will ask anyone out there, if you have comments, throw them in, ask questions. We can kind of dovetail together. But when I look at that Marseille match in a microcosm, it almost represents, to me, the big difference in Liverpool's season. It's really been the difference between league and European form. And I guess I'll ask the listeners out there the question, Do you think that's down to the rigidness of the Premier League, how it's officiated, what they allow, and the physical nature of it with all the new players coming in, especially the three that came from foreign soil, foreign leagues that are much different than the Premier League and intensity wise? Or do you think that it has more to do with the fact that we see a lot less of the low blocks in Europe where teams are willing to come at you? Good morning, Sir Z. Drive safe, brother. Um, I I think it's the latter. I think it has more to do with the style of our opponents, their willingness to play out and play at us. I mean, let's be real. Anyone who watched Brighton, Zenit, St. Pete before that, we knew that the mad scientist De Zerbi was in no way going to park the bus and sit back. I think we probably expected a little bit more chaos, a little bit more helter skelter from them. But I think that has as much to do with the defensive stability. And I think you saw the assuredness and the trust that both Allison and Van Dijk have for Gomez. I also thought it was a really, really understated and good performance from Gravenberch. He got into a lot of different areas of the pitch, but he always seemed, as much as he was going forward, he has felt in these last 6 to 10 matches during the unbeaten run that Gravenberch has really kind of slowed down that ultra aggressive runs into the box that he and joining the attack that he was doing earlier in the year, which left us mightily exposed. Now, part of that was Gravenberch going forward. I think that was by instruction. I also think a lot of that issue was that McAllister was so off pace and out of form that he wasn't able to track back as much. He was leaving open space. He wasn't covering the spaces very well for him. And that at times I think has been papered over with the inclusion of Curtis Jones in the starting lineup as he's dropped deeper, allowing Soboslai to do more of the, joining in as that fourth attacker. And I thought that was really, really good against Marseille. I would love to see more of this when we get, and we will talk about Bournemouth a little later in the show. Where I struggle a bit with this match is I think if you asked me to rate the players, I probably would have gave every single player on the pitch anywhere from a 7 to a 7.5/8 outside of McAllister. And I understand why the manager decided to start him. Two of his best performances this year have been in Europe, Real Madrid being one that jumps out. I think he was very good against Atletico as well. And speaking kind of to that intensity versus flair, I think that's where McAllister fits a little bit better, especially in this kind of malaise of form that he's been in, because it still doesn't look like Alexis McAllister is fully fit. And that's something that runs through the entire squad. I think that is a problem, probably something that needs to be addressed, because the overall fitness of this side, there are a lot of mitigating reasons. Jota's death, the weird preseason. But we are in January now. It is the 23rd of January, just reminding everyone at the club that the transfer window is open and the rules allow you to buy players as well as sell them. You don't just need to recall them from loans. Scotty said, based on the performance we've seen, I feel like the players feel less pressure in the Champions League because the results have been there, similar to how crisis clubs play better away. We'll take it. And it's a great point by Scotty there. Probably is. I mean, it's not our best chance for silverware purely because the competition is tougher than the FA Cup. But I do think we have a better chance of progressing further in the Champions League purely because of that, the comments about the pressure in the English side of things. It's a weird season when you feel more comfortable playing on the road. And I think the players feel more comfortable playing on the road than the players do playing at Anfield. And we're going to talk a little bit too when we talk about the Bournemouth match. This one is on the road. Very long trip down to the South Coast to Bournemouth. But what I want to, my biggest takeaway from the Marseille match was Mo Salah's inclusion. And the fact that he was included straight from the start, I thought was a great sign. It is shocking and not shocking because Mo is just a consummate professional who continues to keep himself extremely fit and ready for selection, which I think has probably been one of the most overlooked characteristics of this superstar, of this club legend, is that the man has basically been fit since the day he showed up and played 90 minutes every 3 days and has really only complained when he wasn't playing the 90 minutes every 3 days. But what was surprising, exciting, and in my mind, a positive outlook for the next 4 months was the fact that Mo did something that in that match against Marseille that I haven't seen him do in the past, and something he's been very uncomfortable with, which was he played much more narrow, almost like he was playing as a two, like a two striker system or playing off of Ekatike. I think that helps Mo. It keeps him in the box. It gets him in scoring positions. What it also does is it creates space for Frimpong to expose defenses with his pace. And we saw that once again. For me, the only positive basically over the months of December and January has been the continued improvement and impact that Frimpong is making on the side. You can really understand why they were so excited and why it's looking like such a steal at 35 million that they were able to secure him, and why they were so quick to announce it. Just moments after Trent's official announcement that he'd be leaving the club, they were like, okay, this is the guy we're going to get. It's going to change, but you're going to love him. And then he gets hurt in second match, first match, he has the hamstring. He comes back from the hamstring and it gets injured again. I think he was almost written off. One, because Bradley was playing well. Two, because, Arne Slot decided to play every single midfielder at right back. And people were excited about the idea of seeing Szoboszlai and Wirtz play together. Frimpong almost felt like he was an afterthought, where all the attention was on how poor Kerkez was. The real attention was going away from the fact that Frimpong was injured but had all these talents and attributes that might be able to really help impact this side. And I think we're seeing it. He offers pace. He offers guile. And, I heard this on another show. I can't take credit for it, but often when we talk about pacey wingers, we think about guys like Adama Traore or these lightning quick wingers who could just dribble, run past someone, but then they literally didn't know what to do. The thing about Frimpong that is different is he seems to have a very, very high sports IQ when it comes to actually footy. Like, you watch him running at defenders, he'll change his body shape, he'll slow down for a moment where the defender has to decide, is he coming inside, is he going out? He sees that quick twitch, and he's literally 4 yards past him on his way to the byline. I do think as time goes on, we will see the end product improve with the decision-making on when to shoot compared to when to cut back and when to cross. I think he's getting some bad stick on the fact that a lot of his crosses don't meet players when, unfortunately, we've said this numerous times. The manager has said it in recent press conferences. They're just not getting enough players in the box. Midfielders aren't joining in attack. Ekatike likes to drop back because he's more of a center forward than he is a striker, which is one of the reasons I'm really excited to see what Frimpong looks like when Alexander Isak is back fit and playing for the Reds. Because what we saw at Newcastle was they had dynamic wingers that were constantly making runs down and crosses into the box, and Isak was just getting on the end of those. I mean, you can think of how many times Jacob Murphy would beat a player, swing it back into the 6-yard box, and Isak comes in, sweeps up, and finishes it. There are reports today, by the way, just a quick Alexander Isak update. There are reports today that Isak has started individual training, and they expect him on the grass within 3 weeks to rejoin light team training. That would be 4 weeks ahead of his initial schedule. I hope they're not rushing him back, like a new signing in February, because we didn't sign Alexander Isak for 1 year. We signed him for 6 years, and we got to make sure that he gets healthy from that injury. But the excitement of the idea of having an actual poacher-like finisher inside the box at all times, looking to stay in between the sticks and score the goals created, I think will not only benefit Mo, not only benefit Frimpong, I think it's really going to benefit Ekatike in the long run. And I know people are worried about what it looks like when the two of them are playing together. I'm not as worried. So I just want to throw it back out there. Anyone who's just joined recently, if you can, please, whether or not you like listening to me this much or not, throw a like on the video, share it to some groups, get some folks in. because we could use it. Also, if you're in the chat and you have a comment, a question, want to get a topic, try to stay on topic because it's hard enough doing a show by yourself. But we will jump around. I saw one from Sir Z. We will get to the Greek Scouser. Does look like he is on his way back, as he would say, to the greatest place on earth. I think he said living in Liverpool was like Disney World. Good morning, Alan. I hope you're doing well, my friend. So it does look like Kostas Tsimikas is returning to the club after his loan deal with Roma has been cut short. I have not seen it as an official announcement from the club yet. I think there's a couple parts here, and we're going to get into the big breaking story of the morning in a moment. But I just wanted to finish up this one topic on the Marseille match. Hello, Ryan. Thanks for joining. Scotty said, I love his personality too, of course. Says he's hilarious. That's fine too. But if you saw the Sky interview, basically all he talked about was winning trophies. And I think that is getting, I think when you are a surly SOB, right? Roger Clemens, Terrell Owens, there's been numerous footy players. I mean, Ronaldo at times, right? Like there are certain athletes that their MO and shtick is to be surly, to be tough, and to be gruff. And when that happens, that's all anyone thinks about. But then they say things like, but they're brash and defiant because that's what got them here. That's what made them great. That's how they got so great. People told them they couldn't make it and they stuck their head down. Well, when you are a big kid, a joker, or you're aloof, constantly the conversation is, does he care enough? Is his head in it? Yes, he's a good guy and he's the class clown. Yet the idea that winning isn't a driving factor for those types of players always kind of made me laugh, because everyone says we need those players in a dressing room to make sure that the harmony works and you have good leadership and that people can, during the highs you celebrate and during the lows you have someone to pick you up. But then at the same time, you never hear about them having the cutting edge and the winning mentality. And I kind of love that comment from Scotty, because I agree. These players all want to win. They just want to do it in their own way. But I do think the Anfield crowd could use a few more frimpongs. And I did want to touch on that topic before we get into the transfers, because I think the transfers will probably dominate. I've been trying to, as I look over here, I've been trying to keep my X feed refreshing because it is blowing up all day long. Scotty says, for sure, well said. Thank you, my friend. I think Mo is like that too. He's serious, but his permanent expression is a beaming smile. A great role model. And if he was smiling yesterday, he's sure as heck going to be smiling today to find out that his tandem bike ride best friend and coffee getter, Kostas Tsimikas, is on his way back to the club. If the reasoning we're hearing of he's coming back, that's a little bit frustrating for me. But Kirkez has clearly taken the number one shirt. He has clearly moved himself forward. He's 22 years old. He's proving to be pretty fit. He's proving to be reliable when it comes to the minutes he's being asked to play. And I do think that both the manager and some of the players around him truly trust him at this point. You've seen the pass networks improve dramatically with everyone but Gakpo. I thought Kirkez was outstanding, by the way, during the press conference in Marseille. We talk about Kirkez, and I had, in the summer, I called him the Hungarian helmet. One, because that head of hair looks like a helmet and that it was cut by a lawnmower. Two, he is Hungarian. And three, he also looks like he's a bro and kind of a doof. But when he spoke, I thought he was poignant. I thought he was spot on in his response. I thought the way he has deferred to Robertson the entire time he's been at the club has shown nothing but respect for the legend that is Andy Robertson. I feel like he's really betting in, and I do think long-term he becomes a fan favorite here. He's never going to be Robertson. Robbo is a special player. He may be the best left back in the club's history. If not number one, he's definitely number two. He's definitely the most liked, because the other one is Steve Nicol. But when I really think about Kirkez, what I love the most was I never in a million years would think he would speak that good of English. I mean, that's his third language at 22 years old to sit on a European desk and take stupid questions from dumb reporters. Really, really, really impressed with it. Sir Z says, I've heard Robbo has been learning Londonish the last 6 months on Duolingo. We will get to that. But as I was talking about Anfield and having likable players and players that the crowd and the supporters can get behind, I really, really think it's understated at this point. There's been a lot of talk about the booze last week. There's been a lot of talk about the unrest of the way we've played, whether it was Leeds, Sunderland, Burnley, at home specifically, with the handbrake on and the non-attacking football. Criticism for Soboslai for kind of slowing down attacks and breaks, and is that tactical or not? The other thing that hasn't been talked about a lot here, because we don't go to the matches every week, has been the growing issues with the searches and the procedures. Now, it's a safety ordinance, so I understand what they're doing, but what used to take 5 to 10 minutes to walk into a match, people are being queued up 30, 45, 50 minutes at some of the primary gates to get into the stadium. And when a supporter walks into a match 10 minutes late, they're already pissed off, and then they get to their seat and the play pisses them off more. I think you need some guys like Frimpong, like Verts, even Kirkes, to get the energy levels up. And that's where I think the excitement of having Mo back would go a long way. I also think that's where the excitement of a signing or two, even if it's bringing players back on loan, whether it's Simicast, whether it's Harvey Elliott coming back on deadline day, as a lot of people are reporting that they think that Elliott may be back, but it won't happen until right at the end of the window. I'm still a little bit skeptical. I feel like if they were going to make that move, they would have already pulled the trigger on it. I personally endorse it, think it's a smart move, but it hasn't come to fruition at this point. Sir Z says, we were the most successful during the drinking culture when everyone just enjoyed playing. You know, it's a funny thing. People talk about the drinking culture and the drinking period, back when players would literally smoke cigarettes at halftime, go out together and, they'd have beers in the dressing room and then go out and have more. And then they'd show up for training the next day, kind of bloated and piss driven, and then just kind of get off the ale. Like, you always heard that, like, oh, he played better on the ale. At the same time, this physical demands on these players today probably don't allow them to act that way. When you see it in players like Jack Grealish, right? Like, you see it in players that actually can't withstand it. So I guess what I'm saying about the fans at Anfield is I'm not blaming anyone for the way they act. I think when supporters start telling other supporters how to feel, you can banter and argue about why you disagree with the way someone feels. I just don't think that it's right to tell other supporters, especially those who have paid good money, how to respond. And some of those boos are to the players, to the manager. I think some of those boos are to the club. And I think some of those boos are basically out of frustration of what is happening with regards to the Anfield experience. Now, we're not the only club that is doing this. I think 7 of the 20 Premier League clubs have a similar ticketing and entry style format right now. It's not going great, but thank you for joining the chat. Please feel free to get some ideas and comments in, because I got 37 more minutes to run this through if we make the whole hour. And if we do that, I will be shocked, but we will see what we do. We've always said we'll run shows short, and then somehow we end up going an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes because, well, we love to talk to you and we love to talk Reds. So let's get back to the action. Hopefully they figure out ways to speed up the entry into the stadium, especially while it's bitter cold outside. I couldn't imagine being in the wind or in the rain, standing outside for 30 to 45 minutes just to find out that I get to go in and watch a 0-0 draw with Leeds. That might make me think about booing as well. And I might just be booing my decisions in life. But let's swing to the big story of the morning. David Ornstein has reported that Andy Robertson is in communication. The clubs are in communication, and Andy Robertson is open at the moment to a move to Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah, just delay the away fans. I love it. The problem is they only let them in one gate, and they're probably the first ones into the damn stadium. That's the real issue that we run into. So Robbo going doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not gonna lie. If you gave me club legend leaving end of January in the middle of December, I would not have told you that I thought it would be Andy Robertson taking a transfer and a fee. So I guess I'll ask you in the chat, folks that are watching online, what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm torn here. Sorry, I got something in my throat. I'm torn here because I do understand the players desired for minutes. I think Andy Robertson, I wanted to have a conversation this morning about transfers in general and how we're seeing a lack of transfer activity happening all across Europe in comparison even to other January, especially recently, as the January transfer window has really been a way for teams that are deep into European competitions to strengthen now that they've removed the jeopardy of not being able to play for two clubs in the same competition because they consider the league stage, and the knockouts as two separate periods. I have a feeling, a sneaky hunch that a lot of this has to do, sorry again about that. A lot of this has to do with the fact of the World Cup. I think players are truly nervous about their position and their status. I think you have certain players that don't have to worry. And I do believe that Andy Robertson is one of those, right? We know that Scotland's in the World Cup. We know he's going to play every minute for Scotland in the World Cup. But I do wonder if some of his desire to get out is, one, he wants minutes. He wants starts. Players want to play. I think he wants to share his experience, maybe try a new challenge. That was the rumor about Madrid, Atletico in the summertime. But I also think it really comes down to the fact that he wants to be as fit and ready for the World Cup as humanly possible. This is the last major tournament he's going to get to represent his country in. And I do believe they would be remiss to not have him there at a fit and firing top level. You know, people joke about the Scottish team and how far they could go. They have a decent draw. They have really good players, and they have a few players at top form, especially in McTominay on what he's doing over in Serie A, his confidence there. I am going to get to some of the chats. I knew once I brought up Robbo, I wouldn't be able to keep up with it. So we'll kind of bring a few of these here. Sir Z says Robbo leaving is on the same heartbreak level as Mane, Bobby, and Klopp. So it's a great point. And I do think that the saddest part for me, if he does decide to leave, is it would have been great to see him get a run out at some point in May and get his send off. I was in the ground when Divock Origi left, and they are not anywhere on the same levels or trajectories. I do not want anyone to come at me for this. But I was there and I saw the absolute love and admiration for that player. And to see him leave and get the serenade and the banners across the cop, all of that would happen for Robbo times 5 or 10. And he deserves that. But he also deserves to play. And I find it interesting, and Ryan says Robbo really wants to play. He deserves it. I'm sad, but I respect his wanting to play. I do agree with that. I also think at some point, if Kazi were here today, he'd be losing his mind that we're the maddest club in the world and we're batshit crazy and no other big club would do this and allow players to leave like this, especially without a suitable and or improved replacement. So once we get through the comments and we catch back up, I do want to talk about why this might be happening, why Liverpool might be looking at this, and maybe some silver linings that could be out there. Don't quote Galley on it because most likely nothing's going to happen. If you listen to Arne Slot in the presser today, he told us nothing was going to happen by the end of the transfer window, but it wouldn't be the first time a manager or coach said that and then activity happens. So Robbo exit, if true, is odd for us, but if Robbo wants to leave for guaranteed time in a World Cup year, we can't begrudge him that. He's earned the right, and we should honor what he wants. I really do agree with that comment. It saddens me. It hurts. If it were up to me, I wouldn't. But I think blocking veteran players who aren't getting minutes, who have seen their time reduce, does not help you get all these players who are up for contract to resign. So if you are Dom Soboslai and you're 27 going into 28, I think, or 26 going into 27, and they want you to sign a 5 or 6 year deal, are you comfortable with the idea that you may get to 30, 31, no longer be a first team starter, and the club won't allow you to leave and you have to stay to run down your deal? And we've seen more and more of players running down their contracts. Now, I don't know if that is a club hierarchy kind of outlook on the best way to utilize resources, if it is a player controlled world that Europe is shifting to more players saying, you know what, I want to run these things out. It just doesn't make sense to me. Alan does say, why Spurs? They won't win anything. I don't disagree with that, but moving to London isn't the worst thing in the world for him and his young family. Spurs offer him the ability to be a leader immediately. I would argue if Spurs pull this off, I would literally, if I was Thomas Frank and I wanted to win over some people there, I might strip Romero of the captaincy and give it to Robertson right away and be like, we now have a winner in the dressing room and a true leader, and not someone who takes, silly red cards and makes moments more about himself. I think he helps stabilize them. We can all laugh all we want, but the truth of the matter is Spurs are currently in the top 8 of the Champions League. So Robbo most likely gets at least a playoff round ties, if not knockout round ties. Who knows? Maybe they get a good draw. They pick up a win. They make it to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. You never know. These are things that I think he could be looking at. Sir Z says, selfishly speaking, I want him to stay another season, but he's earned his move. I find it telling that a few weeks back, he brought up that he and the club were opening talks about contracts, but then now he is this quick to leave, because I wonder if the terms and the promises around playing time made him feel like his role was only going to decrease as time went on. And if that is the case, I can understand what might have swung him. I also, I do agree with this too. Ultimately, it would be a massive win for Spurs if the move happens. Quietly, Spurs having themselves a decent window. They sold Brendan Johnson, who the manager didn't rate and really has struggled over the last about 6 months to maybe this season and the last 3 months of last season. He struggled for form, even though he scored the winner in the Europa Cup final, which I would argue, I'm not sure he knew much about it, just kind of bounced off and went in the net against United. Where they brought in Conor Gallagher, which I think is a shrewd signing. They needed a little bit more steel in that midfield, especially with the news that Bergvall, who I would argue is their best talent and best up-and-coming player, along with Archie Gray, is going to be out for a while. So if Spurs can pull this off, it might just stabilize their side a bit, and it might also lead to them being able to use Jed Spence in more of an attacking role, shift formations. Some believe they may even be going to a back 3, and that this will allow them to play with wingbacks. I can't really see that under Thomas Frank. He didn't do that much at Brentford. I know the new guy has done it every once in a while, but this does feel to me like it could be kind of like a seismic moment for him. So Scotty says it's such an interesting move because if there's any personality at club above Mo, as we're seeing, that he's a guy that would stick it out to be a club guy, leader, it's Andy. It's just about minutes. I do think it's just about minutes. I think it's about minutes and it's about his role. I think it's about I think we do this, right? As supporters, we assume that players will get to 30, 31 and say, I love it here so much. I'm okay with sitting on the bench. Sure, buy this 22-year-old kid. And at the beginning of the year, he probably thought to himself, man, this kid keeps playing like this. I'm going to have minutes. There's going to be room for me. Well, there wasn't. And there's no two ways to look at this. Kirkes has come on. He has probably earned the right to own the shirt at this point. He's put in some really assured performances. I still think there's a lot to learn though, and I'm nervous about Simicast coming back. Not as nervous as Timuchin is. Um, Timuchin is so frustrated and upset hearing that Simicast is back. He made himself sick to the point that he slept through all of my messages asking him to come on and fill in for Kazi this morning. In all seriousness, Timuchin, I hope you get better, feel better soon. You got to feel better than I do, because in the Northeast, they're talking about 1 to 2.5 feet of snow ripping through us from Sunday to Monday. So not looking forward to that. And at the same time, they're calling for 7-degree temperatures. So not only is it going to snow some more, we are going to freeze during the entire thing. So let's get into some of the whys, right? Scotty said, could it also signal, if you want to be a glass half empty, that he's not digging the vibe at the club right now? I don't like that. And I don't disagree with Scotty that could be a case. I don't subscribe to that, because I think when everyone talks about the dressing room, I made this comment maybe in Discord or somewhere else the other day. What that performance against Marseille, the performance against Arsenal, the performance against Inter Milan, at 2 or 3 of the toughest moments for Arne Slot this year, when it comes to, the comments, the bad interviews, the fight with Mo, all the things, if this side wanted to turn on a manager or show cracks that they were stopped listening, or he had lost the dressing room, and God, I hate that term, because I don't know how you lose anything you don't own and or hold on. But if that mood had gotten so sour and dire, I don't think you see the level of team and committed performances that you did against Inter Milan, Arsenal, and in a different way against Marseille on Wednesday. So I think these players are still there. I think the vibe is getting better, and I think it improves because the signings have improved. When the season started, it was just the old guard playing well. Now there is this verb of Ekatike, Verts, Kirkes, Frimpong. And then you start thinking to yourself, if we can get Mo back firing, Gakpo comes on, you could tell he has been hurt by the commentary. He's been hurt by what he's seeing. If you think these players don't read stuff online, all you have to do is see that guy drag Kirkes and then apologize, and Kirkes respond from his official Twitter site that it was okay, bro. Everyone has rights to their opinion. It drives me further. I absolutely love this kid, I got to be honest. But let's get into the Robertson thing. Let's talk a little bit, and Alan mentions it. What could be some of the underlying reasons? So there are some reports out there that potentially there could be discussions happening right now about Mickey van de Ven making the move in the opposite direction this January. One of the few positions Spurs has some depth at is center back, with Danzo, Dragusin, and of course the crazy Argentine Romero. They do have, and they have they can play Archie Gray there. So could that potentially be the move? The other move could be that they're doing the diddle they've done in the past, like when they agreed to sell Kwanzaa at a really cut rate in an early time, and all of a sudden Florian Wirtz, you could tell there were multiple negotiations happening at once. This could be a, we'll give you Robbo now. He wants the move, and you make sure we get some preferential treatment for Mickey van de Ven in the summertime. It'll be interesting to see what he does. Van de Ven offers you flexibility because he can play left back. He can play left center back. If you decided to ever switch to a back three, new managers, Javi Alonso, and wanted to play with some wing backs, because maybe you've heard on this show a few times that we have a couple wing backs that are better at wing backing than they are at full backing. Mickey van de Ven makes a lot of sense. My issue with van de Ven is basically that his hamstrings seem like they're made of string cheese, and I'm not sure our style of play and the soft tissue injuries we've been having, that buying a player that has had 5 or 6 muscle injuries in the last few years is great business. But then again, they did buy Isak, and everyone made those comments earlier on as well. It would be interesting, too, to bring Mickey van de Ven in to see how exactly the response is from Alexander Isak. I know he was very deferential on Twitter. in the response to his apology, saying he understood it wasn't personal. He didn't think he did it on purpose. It's still different to then turn around and see the guy who broke your leg in the dressing room each and every day with you. The other thing, though, that I wanted to ask, and Scotty says Van de Ven's value is not 75 million, even if Spurs say so. It's not, but this is something we have to get over, right? Semenyo's value was 80 to 90 million if he didn't have a release clause. I don't believe Semenyo is an 80 to 90 million pound player, especially if you sign guys like Mo Salah and Sadio Mane for 30 and 35 million respectively. But that was 8 years ago. Right? If players are going for 100 million, if Michael Olise's, deal is worth 110, then that makes Semenyo worth 90. And I do think we have to look at the value of these players. I would argue right now that Van de Ven is one of the top 5 center backs in the toughest league in the world, all around, offering goals, offering pace, age, profile. He looks the part. He is the long-term successor for the Netherlands at center back. So maybe he is the long-term successor for Van Dijk at Liverpool, and coming here and playing for a year behind one of his idols and learning. I think if necessary, Virgil could play on the right-hand side of a 2. So maybe in a world you bring in Van de Ven, he stays for the rest of the year. And then he's a sub. He plays some left back. He gives you a little bit of time. He gives some different looks. And then maybe next season you try to see what does a partnership look like where Van Dijk plays on the right-hand side of defense. And instead of the long spraying passes out, to Mo, now Mo's not here. And maybe you're making those same long spraying passes out to the left winger who could be, young Rio if he takes a step forward. Maybe it's a Bradley Barcola or a signing that they make. I do think a left-wide attacking player will be the biggest player that they bring in the summer, in my opinion, other than maybe a midfielder. Ryan says, I wonder if Isak and Van de Ven talk a bit because of these rumors. They have already kind of cleared the air. There was a lot of talk right away. Scotty said he agreed with me. That's never a good idea. Just going to put it out there. It's not my money, but if he costs that much, just bring in Bastoni. I don't disagree with that as an Italian who loves Italian football. I think Bastoni is the best center back in the world. I think Bastoni is the player every player would want. I just think it's really, really difficult. It's proven difficult to get top-level Italian players out of Italy, especially when they're not young and looking for a move like Leone was. I just feel like Bastoni will end up moving somewhere within Italy or to like a Real Madrid or one of these big clubs if he decides to leave Italy, but it will be interesting. Ryan said, if that favor of Robbo coming now gets us Van de Ven at 40 to 50, that's decent business. I do agree. Mayo Killer, welcome to the chat. I think his defensive awareness needs some work. And I don't disagree with that. I always say, though, Mamadou Sakho and Lovren were a crazy partnership because neither one could ever rely on where the other one was supposed to be. So they both looked pretty poor at times. And then when you give them a strong partner, they look more assured, slightly. I would like to see Mickey Van de Ven playing alongside someone other than Romero, because I think Romero has the physical attributes and skills to be one of the best center backs in the world. I literally think he has a 2-cent head that makes him mediocre at best. Because if you play center back, and this was always my issue with Konate. Konate gives you in a 25 match period, Konate might give you 18 8 out of 10 performances or better. The problem is the other 7 are 6s, 4.5 to 6s. And I think at center back, you can't play that way. You just can't. When you're a center back, you have to give consistency because you make everyone else around you weaker. And I think that's what Romero does. So if that's what he's doing to Van de Ven, that could be the case. Mayo the Killer says Sacco was a madman. He absolutely was mad, and it wasn't just the hair, it was just everything about him. Timuchin's up. He says, "Now this is reckless. No question. This is as reckless as it gets." Sir Z asked the real question, why would we buy another injury-prone defender? And I don't disagree with this. I understand the talent. I would rather them look elsewhere. Now, there is another angle to this that some are talking about out there on Twitter and in other areas, but that angle is that if Liverpool sells Robertson, could this be because there is a player, not Van de Ven, that they have sights on acquiring in the next week before the transfer window closes that we would be able to sign only if we sell someone who is not homegrown. And I did double check. Robertson is no longer considered a homegrown player and is considered one of our not taking up a non-homegrown slot. So, I'm looking at you, Schlotterbeck. Could there be a deal with Dortmund that the club feels is possible? You recoup a fee for Andy, most likely profit because we only paid 8 million for him. And then he's won you everything. He's a club legend. You wish him the best. He goes off to Spurs, and it allows you to go out and spend in this window, bring in a center back who offers depth and coverage as well as the ability to play on the left-hand side. Because the only thing more reckless than Galley hosting a show by himself is the idea that you're bringing back Costa Simicast as your first choice backup left back. Because if that's the case, the Hungarian helmet has to play just about every single match. And I'm dead serious when I said it. He's going to need to play almost every minute because I feel like if Simicast was let off on loan because he wasn't good enough. Let's just call it like it is. He went to Serie A league that is slower, actually plays to his strength in a Roma setup, and I think he has under 400 minutes of total football, which also makes me question and worry about his fitness levels and could he handle the rigors of the Premier League. Now, someone who we know can handle the rigors of the Premier League and is supposedly potentially going on loan to Arsenal is David Luiz. Douglas Luiz. David Luiz. David Luiz going to Arsenal was where my mind went to. It was Douglas Luiz who could be leaving Forest already and heading on loan to Chelsea. Now, it's a 6-month loan, no options to buy, no obligation. I ask you, the listeners, if you could bring in Douglas Luiz, a proven Premier League midfielder, he'd probably be 4th, 5th, even 6th choice. He'd basically be taking over the Endo slot, but giving you a legitimate number 6. Would you consider that for 6 months? I know there have been people who have liked Douglas Luiz at times, have talked about Luiz in the past. Like, would that be someone that you'd be willing to take a little gamble on to bring in some squad depth and some squad help? Because it doesn't look like the Harvey Elliott thing is going to happen. I know Ryan said Harvey for Schlotterbeck. I mean, they don't really do trades. And I don't really think that we will be seeing Harvey back in the second half of the season. I can't really figure out why, unless there is some type of financial reason not to do it. Mayo Killer says, I think we need a no-nonsense DM who can pass. And, I mean, to be honest, that is kind of what Douglas Luiz has been at times. Not saying that it's something that would happen, not saying it's even something that Liverpool will entertain. I feel like Chelsea is just acquiring player after player. Let's see. We get to some more of these comments here. Falling behind Galley, Devil's Advocate. We have seen Simicast play closer to his best more recently than Douglas Luiz, and I liked him at Villa. Smells to me like he'd be Arthur Melo number 2. I hear you on cover, though. I do agree with that outside of the fact that the move to Juventus never made any sense. He's a Premier League player. Um, I still think there's a player in there that could give you 5-10 minutes of matches and give the likes of Curtis Jones, McAllister, and a professional who could see things out the way Endo did the final year for Klopp and a little bit last year for Slot. Um, Slot clearly has no faith in Endo. I don't think supporters want to see Endo play anymore. And I do think we need somebody to come in and see out matches because we have seen what happens with leads 5-10 minutes to go. And you give opponents in this league an instance of insecurity, and I feel like they jump through it. And I would argue, Scotty, I never saw anything from Simicast that made me think he was good enough to be a Liverpool football player ever. Not once. Not the penalty kick in the FA Cup final, not that short little run when Robertson was hurt. I don't think he was ever good enough. And to be honest, if it meant it, I'd rather an Owen Beck. I'd rather a kid from the academy get minutes. I really would. I'd rather play Joe Gomez at left back. And I understand that means you have to sign a center back and all these different things. There were players we probably should have looked at in the summer, like Hato, that are just toiling at Chelsea. They're already talking about potentially cashing in on him. He's a center back who also played left back. There's a lot of different options, but Serzi said he would bring him back a la Kabak length of term. I think he's talking about Elliott there. I'm a bit surprised, Ryan says, I haven't heard or read a single Endo rumor. I'm not, because I'm not sure anywhere else in European football is looking for a 30-plus-year-old warrior. And I use the quotes because he is that, but he's just not what this side needs, in my opinion. And I just don't think it fits any longer. Scotty says, but then how do you explain him failing at Forest? Didn't even know he was there. So he's only been there for the first half of the season. I'd argue any player who comes in on loan, gets injured, and then has 3 different managers in 3.5 months that he's fit, might find it difficult. The other thing is to be fair, the one thing they have is Elliot Anderson, and he offers a lot of what Douglas Luiz would bring to that side. And they have Sangari. So I feel like that was more of the crazy Greek owner just saying, oh yeah, get me a name I know. He used to play at Villa. We'll take the piss out of Villa. Maybe his ex-girlfriend will come back with him and play for the women's side. Just kidding. But it was a weird one, but he's gone through, Nuno, Ange, and now the Dyche. So I can see where that might not have worked, and I might not hold it over his head. Timmy can cross. I would just swap the it's just cover opinions between him and Luiz here, but only so much I can muster about backup players. I understand that point, but Luiz offers you backup for 4 different positions and 4 different players that we ultimately only have 4 to 5 of those midfielders, where Simicast is your one option at left back at a position we're already weak in defense. And I do think you have to mitigate for the idea that if an injury occurs to a midfielder, Curtis Jones gets 10 starts and Douglas Luiz goes 1 player up the rung. If Kirkes gets hurt, Simicast is playing 70 to 90 minutes 3 times a week. 1, he's never proven he can do that. 2, I don't think he's gotten stronger since going to Italy and not playing any football. And I know Serzi's a big fan. He thinks Costas gets a raw deal. It's not his fault he looks like Costa Pyro. I was not ready for that comment, Serzi. There are a lot of things that Simicast does. Miss a nap is not one of them. I will tell you that right now. Nor does he miss finding out time to get Mo. Well, I'll tell you what, if that good-looking woman showed her way back up, Forrest might decide to start a women's team. But Ashley Ehrman, we're just kidding. You're a fine, I will reiterate, fine footballer. All right, we're getting off the rails, but it is Friday morning. So we got 5 minutes left. We went a little longer on that, but I expected it to be a lot of conversation. I want to appreciate and thank all of the listeners today, all of the viewers who have commented throughout the show. You have helped me get through this. Honestly, no one that's ever listened to this show was worried that I wouldn't be able to talk for 60 minutes because, well, sometimes with Bickler and Timuchin, I still talk for 60 minutes. But doing it by yourself is a lot harder when you don't have anyone else to talk to and or take a sip of coffee. So while I take this sip of coffee, why don't you all get in with those predictions? Look at you, Scotty. Thanks for the help. Let's get predictions for Bournemouth, and then we'll talk a tiny bit about the lineup, what we think is coming, and we'll get on with our weekend. So I will start here. I do think Liverpool wins this match. I think they build on what we saw. I wish I could say we get a clean sheet, but I do think the way Bournemouth plays, they are a tough side for us to go up against. Makes it easier when they don't have Tavernier, makes it easier when they don't have Kluivert, and of course, after selling Semenyo. I'm going to say it's a 3-1 win. Ryan is coming in with a 2-1 win. Mayo Killer just wants to give me a heart attack this weekend, says it's going to be 3-2 to Liverpool, the good guys. I see we are not very confident on the clean sheet, and neither are the bookmakers. I think we are down on the list of clean sheet odds. So with that, I think we summarize today as our thoughts and positive vibes going out to Ibu Konate and his entire family following the loss of his father. I think we're torn as supporters, especially in this chat, about the Robertson breaking news this morning that potentially he could be on his way to Spurs. I see a lot of positive sides of Robbo deserves this. We shouldn't stand in the way of a club legend. And then you have the folks like Kazi that are like, I hate saying it. Yes, he's a legend. We can send him off. But selling one of your leaders and your vice captain in a season where we really need it is going to be tough. Kav 3637, welcome to the chat. Not sure I've seen you before, but appreciate you being here. 1-2 Liverpool. It's going to be a difficult game. Krupi might score for Bournemouth. My fantasy team wishes you to get that right. If it's going to be 3-1 and I get my prediction right, I do hope Krupi Jr. is the one who scores. Really, really big talent. Think he has an opportunity to show himself the second half of the season and potentially get himself a big move. Big up American Scouser. Appreciate the support. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Everyone in the chat, by that way, please subscribe to the channel. And if you can do us a favor, if you do enjoy this content, if you enjoy these shows, if you're in WhatsApp groups with other Liverpool supporters, if you have mates that you watch matches in a pub, whether it's here in the States or overseas or on a continent unknown to me, please share a link, let them know about the show. We're always looking for new contributors, new listeners, and new viewers. You guys are the ones that make this shows happen. You drive the conversation. Jimbo checking in here. 2-0 to my beautiful Reds. We back out own, including Ibu at this time. Condolences to him at this time. And we definitely stay that as well. Alan says, stay safe, folks. I think he's speaking to the folks that are up north that are about to get whacked with big ass snowstorm. So let's say this. How about the Reds go down to the South Coast and put a whacking on Bournemouth? Up the Reds, down the Cherries. For everyone here at American Scouser TV, thank you for watching. Thank you for your support, and enjoy the match. We'll be back next week.